Hello, my name is Wayne Ergel. Welcome to this video. You should have already seen the first one in this series, which is the n8n AI SEO Content Engine. The first one was an overview of the workflow and a demo on how to use it. This one is how to set it up. So I'm going to look at some of the key setup things you need to do to make it work, and then I'm going to do a short, quick start, how to use it after I go over how you set it up. Okay, so let's start with the beginning, and that is this n8n switch node. I got the inspiration from Ben AI. He used this same kind of approach in AI SEO Agency in a Box. I think that's the name of it. It's a huge workflow, and he has this switch in front of it, and I thought that works great. I'm going to use it in my content creation workflow. So key there, I'll go through how to set it up here in a moment. In fact, I'll go through that now, and let's jump into n8n. And you'll notice the very first thing here is a webhook. So the whole key to this workflow is that in Airtable there are single select status fields that you set to trigger the workflow. The trigger comes from Airtable and it hits this webhook in n8n. I'll show you how to set up the webhook trigger in Airtable here in a moment. Another thing I want to mention are these workflow settings. So each one of the tables in Airtable have an ID. So backing up one second, the base has an ID, which you can see here. The primary keywords table has an ID. All of these have table IDs. You need to go into the Airtable base that you made a copy of from my Airtable base and get this information. So the way you get it is you go to the Airtable base, and let's say that we're going to the master all keyword variations table. The table ID is the second set of letters and numbers. So the first one is app, that's the base ID. The second begins with table, and it's after that one forward slash and up until you get to the second forward slash. So you'll see that last, it ends with MC. If I go back here into the n8n workflow, you'll see that my master keyword variations table here ends in MC. So what you'll do is copy that and paste it in here. Now what I found is that when I duplicated the base in Airtable, all of the stuff stayed the same except the base ID. I don't know if that's what will happen when you copy it. I think probably not. So you'll need to go and get those table IDs for each one of these tables and put them in this workflow settings node. So that got our webhook. Well, I'll get to that in detail in a moment. Workflow settings, and then the switch. So here inside the switch, you don't have to set this up, it'll already be set up, but just to show you, the switch is looking for an input, and it switches or it routes the request to the right part of the workflow based on that input. So you'll see I have routing rules based here on, is it equal to keyword research? Is it equal to keyword category strategy? Is it equal to keyword cluster strategy, LLM cluster strategy, or is it right article? So depending on your request, it'll be one of those things, and it gets routed to the right part of the workflow. So just to drill into that a bit, keyword research would get routed here. Strategies would get routed here. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, you don't really have to do anything. That node is set up, but it is important in the next part in the Airtable where we're going to take a look at setting that up. Okay, so here we are back in my presentation, and this is just going to help me remember to tell you how to do this stuff. The very first thing you have to do is set up your own personal access token. And the way you do that is in the Airtable, just when you have it open, click on the little icon for you. You may have a picture there, mine just has a W. Click on it, it'll open this up. You click on Builder Hub right there, and that'll take you to the Builder Hub. And from there, you will click Create a Personal Access Token. So here's what that looks like in Airtable. You go here to your little icon, click on it, it opens up, click to Builder Hub, that'll open the Builder Hub. You click here on Personal Access Tokens and then create a new token. So you need to do that. put it wherever you keep API keys and that kind of thing, but you want to keep it somewhere where you can get it again because you'll need it in this workflow. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the workflow, or back to the Airtable. This one. Okay, so that got us through that first part, which create our personal access token. Let's see what is next. We did that. Now we're going to set up Airtable, make a copy. What I mentioned this in the first video, and I'm going to say it again. Please, when you get the workflow, there'll be a link to copy the base. Please make a copy of it. There'll be at the top left, it'll say make a copy or copy base or something. Do that. If you request access to it, I can't give that to you because that adds you to my plan and I have to pay for you. And I've found out the hard way that can add up to a lot of money really quickly. So you do make a copy. I've already talked about setting up these fields in n8n, so you need to set those. The next thing is automations, and these are automations that are internal to Airtable. They have nothing to do with n8n. They're there whether n8n is there or not. And there are several automations that are part of this workflow. And here they are. There's one that runs when you select keyword research, one that runs when you select keyword categorization strategy, LLM strategy, keyword cluster strategy, two that move content around and create records inside of Airtable, and then the final one is when you want to write something. When you want to write an article, that is an automation. I do have this one in here, move manual clusters. That one's off. It's not used, so you don't need to use that. Okay, so moving on, and you'll see all of those in a minute. So here we are at the internal automations, the n8n trigger. So there's 4 of those. There's one for keyword research, one for keyword categorization strategy, one for LLM Cluster Strategy, and one for writing an article. So I'm going to jump back over there. And if you're not aware, you click on automations, and that takes you to the automations. And the whole reason that we're talking about this, Airtable does not copy automations when you copy a base. So if you copy my base, all of these automations that are here that make it run aren't copied. And that's just weird to me, but that is the way it works. If you duplicate a base within your own account, they do get copied. So figure that one out. But in order to use the workflow, you need to copy the base and then set up these automations. And it sounds worse than it is, because once you do one, several of them are exactly the same. What we're doing is we're going to look at this keyword research, and what I mean by that is here in the workflow, when you have the primary keywords and you want to get keyword research for it, you'd be in this strategy column or in the strategy field, and you would click get keyword research. What you want to have happen when you do that is that it triggers n8n to actually run that part of the workflow. So that's the fundamental operation of this workflow, is getting triggered and running it in n8n. So the one that we're going to look at, as I mentioned here, is run keyword research, and I say here it triggers n8n. So there's 2 parts to it. There's a trigger and there's an action. So the trigger is fairly simple to set up, and by the way, I will have a document that I'm going to share that goes through all this, but it's hard to cover it all in writing, so between it and this video, hopefully you'll be able to set this stuff up. So when you want to set up a trigger in Airtable, there's different types. What you want set here is when record matches condition. So we know that when that condition is met, we want something to happen. You have to tell it which table, so it's primary keywords table. You just saw me inside that. And what happens when the strategy status is set to get keyword research? You run a script. This is the script that will run, and this is what makes the connection to n8n, and I'm going to show you that script in a little more detail here. And just for the record, I got this script probably a year ago from somebody else on YouTube, and they said this works, and it does, so I use it. I haven't examined it all that closely. I just know that it works. There's a couple things though that you need to do before you get to the coding part, and that is set up variables. Airtable has this sort of nice feature that lets you set up these input variables so you can give it a name. Here's one, record ID, spelled record, capital I, capital D, and give it a value. And where you get the value is click on the little plus sign, and where it says choose data, you're going to choose what data you want it to use. So in this case, it's the Airtable record ID, okay? And then the next one, super important, is the webhook. So you have to give it a name. I called it n8n webhook URL, just as you see it there. If you want to use my script exactly the way it is, you need to use the name exactly the way it is. So you give it that name, and then the value is, you come back into n8n, click on your webhook, and here is the URL, and you just click on it to copy it. So get that value, get that webhook value, go back into Airtable, and paste it in right here where it says value. So pretty simple. And then the other thing that you want to do is set up an input variable for primary keyword, and this helps the workflow. You get the keyword right up front, and so again, you can just do this as part of the setup. So you create, by the way, you would click input variable here, add input variable here, you click it, you give it a name, and then again, to find the value, you could give it any name you want, but if you want to use this script, you should name it as I did. You click on the plus, scroll down to find whatever you want. Here's primary keyword. You select that. That would put primary keyword in right there. Okay, so that's the input variables you need to set up. Then you just take and copy. I'm going to provide this script in the workflow and in the document that I mentioned, but you would just copy it from whichever place you get it and paste it in. And you can see what's happening here. We have these parameters, which these are parameters over here, and they are effectively variables. And then you're running this webhook part, and I should tell you, I don't know exactly how all this stuff works. I'm just intuiting it. But again, I do know it works. So you want to just use this as is. And what's going to happen is when you trigger the webhook, this information, the type, which is what triggers what the switch node uses to determine how to route, which is really important. That's where this is set, keyword research. You want the record ID to be sent, and you want the primary keyword to be sent. So let me see if I can I'm just going to break this for a moment. I'm going to say test. I'm going to come back over here and go to data, go to keyword research, or primary keyword. I'm going to say get keyword research. That triggered the workflow, and so now we can take a look at what happened. And I'm just going to look straight out of the webhook, and you can see all of this data was sent here, but the really important stuff is keyword research, the record ID, and the primary keyword. So as I said, the switch node is looking for inputs, and one of them is keyword research. So when it sees that, it routes it up here to the keyword research section. Okay, so I hope that made sense. So that's how you would set up that one, which is the get keyword research automation. Let me see if I'm missing anything on my little PowerPoint chart. I'll run through those. Okay, hold on. So that was the run keyword research. The next one is run keyword categorization strategy. Again, you have a trigger. The trigger is in the primary keywords. When the strategy status is keyword categories strategy, it runs this script. It's the same script as the other one, except for the type is different. So what we want here is that the type, and this is just typed in, keywords category strategy. We need that to be sent so that it could be routed through the switch node correctly. So again, you'll have this in the document. You can copy and paste it, and it should, fingers crossed, work. The other one, run LLM Cluster Strategy. This is the strategy. So again, we have The trigger, which is looking at the primary keywords table when the strategy status is LLM Cluster Strategy. Run this script. It's the same script except, I can't do that. I want to edit it just to see it. It's the same script except that the type is set here to LLM Cluster Strategy. Again, you should be good for just copying and pasting in. And then what is the other one? Run keyword cluster strategy. So that's the other type of strategy. Again, same exact thing, except this is keyword cluster strategy. So maybe this would be a good time. I'll go back here and open up the switch node. And here's where you'll see all of those things. Like you saw that I had keyword research in one of them. I had keyword category strategy in one, cluster strategy, LLM clusters, and write article, which we haven't talked about yet. But that's how the switch node is getting its input on this side, and then it routes it correctly on the other side of it based on what it receives. So that is how that works. That was those. Let's see, there's the write article triggers. This is the other one that triggers n8n. It's still the same thing, I think. Let me just check it. Yep, same exact thing, except I did not put the primary keyword in here. I don't know why. I do get that in a different way, but you could add that back. But here again, we've got our URL and all this stuff. You should be able to copy and paste it. Okay, so that is that. Say finish editing. I'm going to go back to the data, go back to my chart so I remember if I've missed anything. We've set up Airtable. So the other kind of thing to set up in Airtable are these internal automations. So for example, when I want to write an article, I go to this clusters content table or to the keyword content table, and I change the status from TBD to send to article writer. That is an automation inside of Airtable. If I want to send this one over there, that also it's running the same automation. And also at the end that it changes the status to in article writer. So that's a little touch to try to help keep this all organized. So if we go look at that automation, I called it move clusters content to article writer. So this one is strangely maybe a tiny bit more complicated because there's more fields to set up, but again, we're going to start with a trigger. It's this when a record matches condition. So it's still in the, or no, it's in the clusters content table. When the status is send to article writer, it's going to create a record. And where is it going to create the record? It's going to create the record in the article writer table. So let's go look at that real quick. We're in the clusters content. We've set send to article writer. It sent it over there. It changed the status to in article writer. And if we go look, we have in our article writer table these new articles that are ready to write. The records were created to put them into this article writer table so that you could then click write article and have it write. So the automations themselves, this you are going to have it. The trigger, as I already said, is when record matches condition. Then we're going to create a record in the article writer table. So you say that here. So the table is article writer, and now you're telling it what fields in the article writer do you want to set. And we want to set the title, and we want to set the title to, and this is a little, it's not exactly clear, I would say, from Airtable side of things. The data that you have to choose from is the table that started all of this. So in this case, it's the clusters table, and in the clusters table there is a title, and you can click here and say, okay, I want that title from the clusters content table to be sent or to be used to create the record in the article writer table. So you're creating a record in article writer, and you're getting the stuff that you can use to create the record from the content clusters table. I hope that makes sense. If it does, the rest of this should be pretty easy. So we want to get the title, we want to set the status. We have the option of status, ready to write article or complete. You want to set it to ready to write. You want it to bring over the cluster name. So again, I've searched through here and found cluster name as a field. I clicked on it. That put cluster name right there. The type of article, whether it's a cluster or a keyword type article, that's important for the workflow. So on pillar or subpage, this one's slightly different. You want to click on this little gear thing and say dynamic. So when you click dynamic, it's using the variable, or it's using the data from the other table, and that's basically what we've been doing. But this is a single select field, so it's treated a little differently. But you want to take the gear icon, select dynamic, and then look in here and find pillar or subpage, and then it will take whatever it was set to in the clusters content table and set it to that in the article table. Does that make sense? I hope. Article URL, so we've got an article URL field in the article writer table, and it's pulling that from the content clusters table. All of this is the same. Primary keyword, article, primary keyword, secondary keywords, and description are all fields that are in the clusters content table. They're all fields that are getting created or that are in the article writer table, and they're getting filled by whatever you select here. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the community. But it's a little tricky with Airtable stuff, but once you get it, it's like anything once you learn it. The final thing is I did update the status. So once it runs through this part, it does finish up with updating the status of the clusters content table, and that status is set to in article writer. So hope that made sense. We do have one other one, which is move keyword content to article writer. So if you recall, there's the keyword content and there's the clusters content. The keyword content is the same thing in that when you are in that table and you have an emerging topic that you want to write about and you select send to article writer, it triggers this automation that I was just talking about. So now it's put how an AI automation agency can transform your business into the article writer, and there it is. Okay, so that's how that works. The automation is the same, almost exact thing as the clusters one, so I'll let you sort through that. Again, if you have any questions, let me know in the community. All right, we now are moving on to setting up Airtable. That's what we just talked about. I'll make these charts available too, if that helps you. Set up data for SEO. This one has been a source of confusion, and I've been part of the problem, so I want to clear that up. In data for SEO, you have a login for your account, so that's your email and password, and then there is the API credentials, which is your email and an API password. You don't set it, they set it. I'm sure it's automatically generated somehow. And they tell you to copy it down when you first sign up for the service. You probably didn't. I didn't. So who knows, you would need to do something like that. But you can go to your dashboard, click on API access, and you'll find the API password. If you did not copy it down, there's a button over here on the right that says email it, and if you click email, it will email you almost immediately your API password. So you're going to need these two things to set up data for SEO. Okay, so you get them, and what you're going to do is encode them into what is called base 64. And the way you do that, and this is where I confuse people, not on purpose, but let me just break that out so we can see the whole thing. What you're going to do is in some way or another encode it, and there's a couple ways to do that, and I'm going to tell you those, but what you need to encode is your email, bill@gmail.com, no space. I've been saying put a space there, don't put a space, and put your API password. So all of that is combined together into one one set of numbers and letters and characters with no spaces in it. Okay, so that's like step number one. So step number two is to encode that, and you can do that in a couple places. One, I created a little workflow. I will include this, but what you do is just click test workflow. When I say include this, I'll put it in the community along with the other workflow. Put in your email. I wish it wouldn't do that. Give you my dog's email, buddy@gmail.com. API password would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pass. We'll just say that. And click submit. And it's now here at the end, you'll see the string, you'll see it actually encoded. So I forgot to say that. DataForSEO has this ability to actually encode, to do a base 64 encode of a string. So we've got the email, colon, and password, and it, oh, I see where I typed it wrong. It doesn't matter. It'll send that over to this set field node. I had to think about how this works. And you'll see where I have .base64 encode, and that encoded it into your base 64 string. So what you would want to do is get that, copy it, put it in wherever you keep APIs and passwords and all of that. The other way to do this is there is a website. There it is, base64.encode decode. Select encode. Where is it? There it is. You can put in your email and your API password. So email, colon, API password, no space, and then press encode, and it'll give you an answer here. Someone pointed out in the community is that you use this method, you're randomly putting your information into a website. That is true. I took that risk because I didn't know any other way to do it. But you could use this way, or, and I wish I could remember how he suggested to do it. It was something I was not familiar with, so maybe he'll comment on this and tell you how to do it. But you can either do it this way or use this little workflow that I gave you. Okay, so that gets you to, let me get my little charts back up. So now we're going to go into one of the HTTP nodes that is going to be making a call to DataForSEO and set up our credential. Okay, so that would be one of these nodes. You just double click on it. This URL comes from DataForSEO, and we're calling that endpoint, but that's not really the point of what I'm talking about here. You want to set it to generic credential type. You want to set it to header auth type, and then for the header auth, you would click create new credential. And when you, let's see what happens. New credential is created. Here in name, you type authorization. Give this a name. I always forget to give it a name. Double click on it and call it whatever you want, but that'll help you later. You give this a name, and then in the value section, you put bearer, capital B-E-A-R-E-R, space, and then your base 64 encoded information from DataForSEO for login. I don't want to keep that. Let's see what mine actually looks like. Yeah, as I said, it's authorization, and then this is bearer spelled out and the base 64 login information. Okay, so that should get you going with DataForSEO. What I suggest is if you have problems, fix it here, fix the first node. If you're triggering okay and you're getting through to here and you get set fields for API requests and all of that, and it gets up here and it breaks, then disconnect all of this from it and get this one node to work. Once you get it to work, they'll all work. But you want to, as I said, set up your credential this way. All of this JSON stuff is already set for you, so you shouldn't have to mess with that. So that should get you set up with DataForSEO. Okay. Getting close to the end. Perplexity. Yes, this is the other one that you'll need to set up. It's strangely hard, in my opinion, to figure out how to get your Perplexity API key. You do not have to have, at least according to what I found, a Perplexity Pro account, but you will have to get an API key and pay for that. So you can pay for You can pay for Perplexity or not. I do. I use it all the time, but obviously you don't have to. But what you're going to do is, I have this document here. The link will be in the setup document. It'll be in these charts. Go there, read how to get your API key set up. Then you're going to go into the Perplexity HTTP module, which is down here. There it is. Perplexity search. Again, guys, it'll help you if you'll rename these things. I forget to do it a lot, but it does help if you'll do it. But this is the way you set up most credentials in n8n, and for some reason I don't understand why there is no native node, so you have to use HTTP node. But it's the same kind of thing. You're going to set up a generic credential, header authentication, and then you're going to have your authorization is going to be put here, and this is also bearer and your Perplexity API key, and so that should get you going with that part. Let's see if I missed anything. Header, create, name it, set up Perplexity. Yeah, so you do put the bearer and then API key. I did go ahead and show you, and I'll show you here because it's probably a little easier. The JSON is very simple. With the AI agent nodes, you can have your prompts more easily organized and easier to read. Here you have to do it in JSON, but it is very simple, and you'll see here I just said, you are a precise and concise research assistant. Provide up-to-date and well-sourced answers based on real-time web research. And I give it the thing that I want it to look for, and then it returns it. So that's the whole prompt. You've got a system and a user prompt. The search context, from what I recall, is an option. You can have it probably low, medium, and high. I said high. This web search option is important so that it knows it's web search. So that is how you set up Perplexity. And I think that is all of the setup. Let me get up to my little charts. Okay, so that was the setup of Perplexity. So I hopefully got it all. We set up Airtable, we set up DataForSEO, the HTTP nodes, and Perplexity. As far as all the other stuff and which URLs to call and all of that, it's already set. We'll go through that in more detail when I go through the sections on how it does the categorization and clustering and how the article writer works. I'm going to go through and show you a quick startup guide. I already did this in the other video. If you watch that, there won't be any need to watch this, but I'm going to do it really quickly. So here we go. And it's all done from Airtable, as I've mentioned. So we've got this here. It starts with the master keyword, all variations. Let's look at how we would do a keyword search. Let's think of a interesting keyword. Let's say how to make a great hamburger. Okay. If not started, I'm going to set this to start. Or test workflow. Shrink it down so we can see it running. Test workflow. Go back here. Say started. Get keyword research. And of course, if you have this active, you don't have to go back and forth like I'm doing, but here it is. It is executing the workflow. Hopefully I didn't break anything. Yep, it's running up there. Nope, sorry. Running through our keyword research. We got 10 items, only 3 on this. Interesting. It was a long tail keyword, so maybe that was too long, but we'll see what we get. And I did that to show you the difference between looking for AI agent, which I would normally be doing, or AI automation or something like that, versus looking for, I don't know, a more living oriented keyword. How about that? Living oriented. Okay, so it is running through, it's doing the search. I've mentioned before, I should probably just delete this because it just takes time to run, but I'm not going to do that now. So anyway, let's go see what it did. We can go back into our master keyword variations, and we've got a mix here of AI agent, AI automation, and then how to make a great hamburger. homemade hamburger helper 60,000 times, hamburger patty recipe, burger patty recipe. So these are all the different keywords that Data4SEO came back with. So interesting. So that is how to do keyword research. Now let's look at how to do clustering, and the one that I find interesting that I haven't shown yet is this new one. It's also the fastest, is the LLM Clustering Strategy. So that is basically going out to ChatGPT and saying, create me a cluster on how to make a great hamburger. So that's what we're going to do here. I have to say test again. And we're going to go to our primary keywords. You're always doing that from there. And we're going to select LLM Clusters Strategy. Select that. Go back and see if it's working. It is. Yay. So now it's inside ChatGPT, almost exactly as if you had said, please create me a pillar and subpage structure, a cluster strategy for that keyword. So it's doing its thing now. It's going to go through and set the pillars and subpages, because again what you have is a pillar article with surrounding subpages. And then it's going to write that to Airtable. So let's see how that works. So we got 7 items, so there'll be 1 pillar article and 7 or 6 subpages, right? So let's look at that. That's in the clusters content, and we will just shrink all those. Again, a great thing for me about Airtable is you can group all this stuff and it makes it more manageable. But here's our new cluster, how to make a great hamburger, and here's our articles. Unlock the secrets, how to make a great hamburger, how to make a great hamburger in 2025. All right, so there you go. And I think that is of enough interest to me that I will say, let's write that. And the way we do that is we have our workflow sitting here. We're going to test workflow. I guess I should just activate it. We're going to change the pillar. We're going to change the status to send to article writer. That's going to send it over to article writer. We'll have here here's our cluster, how to make a great hamburger. It's ready to write. I'm going to say write it. And that will send it over here to our Airtable. And you can see already that it's working. And I'm sorry I'm laughing a little bit because I can just imagine what's going to happen here, because it's here in Perplexity. A search for how to create a great hamburger has been sent to Perplexity. It's going to send all that data back. There's probably a lot, right? That's something that people probably are writing about and talking about in the world. So it's going to send all that back and send it off through our pillar writer, which, while it's running, I'll just review what it does. It has this main body outline, so it's creating the outline just for the main body. Doesn't mess with the introduction, no key takeaways, no conclusion, none of that, just the main body. Then we set it so it's all serial, and then we need to get each section. So we're going to split out the sections so that this part, and as I've mentioned, and I think key to the workflow is it's writing each section one at a time. So it gets the outline, it takes the first section and says okay, and writes it. Gets the second section and writes it, third section and writes it. And that is what allows this thing to write really long content if you wanted to do that. So you could go into this prompt and change it from what I have to write 2,000 words per section or something like that. It'd be more complicated than that, but you get the idea, and that would allow it to write really long content. As I mentioned in the other video, it wrote a 13,000 word article on AI agents in 2025 or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. So it really wrote a lot. Also, as part of that is the outline creator, and this one's going to be a lot. It created 9 sections, which is a bit much. I thought I had set that to, or I didn't think it would go to 9. I want it to be more in the 5 to 6, 7 range. So it might be some adjusting to do to that prompt, but we'll see what it writes. So it's still going. It's got on item 7, so it's written, or it's writing the 7th one now. It's got 2 more to go, and then it'll send it through the rest of the workflow. and I'll just let that run and we'll see how that works. Okay, so it made it through there, and now it's at the intro writer. So it's the section that writes the intro. It's on the conclusion writer, so it's writing the conclusion now. Now it's doing the key takeaways, and it will here in just a second finish that, take the whole article, combine it all into one, and put it into Airtable. And it finished. Good job, workflow. Now if we go back and look at it in our Airtable here, we've got key takeaways. As I mentioned, I haven't put this anywhere else. I'm not putting it to WordPress or Google Docs or any of that. I'm just storing it in Airtable. It would not be too hard to add something, add a few nodes at the end to publish it to WordPress. We've done that in other workflows in the community, and could do that here, or you could probably add it yourself. But anyway, let's take a look. So here's our key takeaways. Building an unforgettable burger in 2025 is all about smart fundamentals and bold upgrades. Blending time-tested techniques with pro-level innovation. I'm laughing, but look at it. Master the basics first. This is all our key takeaways. You've got an introduction, and then we're in the main body here, so it's the foundations of a great burger. And again, it was able to write about stuff in 2025 because I added that Perplexity research part of the workflow. Previously, it wouldn't have ever said 2025 unless you said make up something in 2025. I think that was a great addition. And so you can see it's given some pretty cool stuff here. So that's the article that it wrote. So pretty good. All right, so it's getting pretty close to the end. We did the setup, we did the demonstration of how to use it, and now I'm just going to quickly see if there's anything I forgot to say. I will say this again: if you want the workflow, join the WOT-AI community. There will of course be a link in the description, a link in a pinned comment. We'd love to have you there. A lot of people who are just beginning doing AI automations with n8n, and then there are experts, as I've mentioned. Alex Kim is my partner in this, and he's an n8n ambassador, so he really knows his stuff. Not to mention he's a developer who can sit around and do coding stuff, which I can't. So love to see you there. It's an engaged community, a lot of information going back and forth, and just a great place to learn about this stuff and get the workflows included in your membership. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I sincerely appreciate it. I do have 2 more videos coming on this. The third one is a deep dive into the keyword research and strategy sections of the workflow, and then the 4th one is a deeper dive into the article writer. So those will be coming soon, and you don't really need to look at them if you just want to use this to write stuff, but if you want to get inside and make changes, you probably would want to look at them. Okay, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. I know you hear that all the time, but it really does help. And don't forget to join the community. You'll get the workflow, as I mentioned a number of times. So thanks again for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.